Diamond City. Hit game Super Pyro takes flight. WarioWare Inc. My game, it's finished.
Ooh, it's all done? All our hard work.
Yo, hurry up and show us.
Yes, this is it. My best one yet.
What's wrong with it?
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, it is I am the one and only Pac-Man here, and I am Silver the Hedgehog here, and we are from the likes of the Maxi Toys videos here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our yet another Let's Play Intensity Forms of 2024, because remember that we've already got into certain progression for so far anyway, in terms of not only Super Mario Bros. Wonder, but also with Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze so far. And relatively speaking though, now is the time for the weekends departments, and you know what that means. It's time to play some more WarioWare action. And that's because of that, we are now jumping right into WarioWare Get It Together. First came out in 2021 for the Nintendo Switch. You gotta think about it though, Silvers, that this game did came out the exactly same year, as in not only Mario Party Superstars came out, but also with the forms of Super Mario 3D World, plus Bowser's Fury, Mario Golf Super Rush, and especially noticeable with any other Switch titles here and there as well. So because of that, now if you guys are probably wondering about the fact that why we did somehow skipped over some of those WarioWare games, well, the reason being for this is because originally though, we decided able to go into WarioWare DIY in both the Nintendo DS and WiiWare at the same time, but we couldn't be able to actually just to get around into that yet. But hopefully we will do at some point, but even then though, time will tell, especially concerning for the fact that I know for a fact that, well, it is more accurately, it's kind of like the equivalent to Super Mario Maker, I'm pretty sure. Like, you make your own micro games and all that stuff, and that's all there is to really think about it. And also we did somehow skipped over Game & Wario, because let's face it though, I am not a big fan of Game & Wario on the Wii U. That's just mainly because of the forms of the gameplay style I wasn't really particularly a fan of. And another thing too is that we originally decided able to do WarioWare Gold for the 3DS, but I feel like that the actual recording setup is a bit of a pain, because not only you have to utilize the button mashing controls, but also with the forms of twist, stands for gyro sensing controls, and finally touch controls at the same time. And that's not only that though, Pac-Man, we still haven't exactly got our capture card for the 3DS. So, anyways though, so here we are onto the forms of the story mode portion in terms of the forms of WarioWare Get It Together, and it seems to be more specifically though is that we ended up getting into the actual video game itself. So, pretty interesting all things considered. And also, if you remember, if you ever played WarioWare Gold, that this game does have voice acting, but it's only mildly a little amount, whilst unlike in WarioWare Gold, along with WarioWare Move It, that both of those games has utilized the voice acting. So because of that, yeah, enough about the actual the voice acting for now, because we'll get things started with the forms of WarioWare Get It Together by experiencing the first stage, which appears to be the intro stage, or to be more specifically, intro games. So, and right off the bat though is about the fact that we did somehow became the chibi versions of ourselves, mainly for Wario right here. And this is where we get ourselves a different gameplay style as far as this game decides to able to go for this direction, is that we can able to take control of multiple playable characters. So, yeah, for instance, about the fact that we need to take control of Wario for starters, because obviously he's the main character in terms of the WarioWare series of games, and his particular gameplay style is that he does have his jetpack with him, and basically you can able to move around with the analog stick, and on top of that, press the A button to attack. And if you couldn't tell, the control method we're going to be using is, as always, the Switch Pro controller, because I will say the Nintendo Switch Pro controller, it still looks awesome even today. Although, keep this in mind though, is about the fact that unlike WarioWare Move It, that we can't able to actually play around with the Switch Pro controller, so keep this in mind. Oh jeez, is it one of those game bugs? Well, there's only one way to find out, is that we're gonna have to able to get rid of it before it gets all glitched up and such. So, yeah, kind of think about it though, Pac-Man. It looks incredibly similar to Kingdom Hearts Recoded a little bit. Well, except the fact that we have to go through a serious amount of micro games, so... Alrighty then, so let's get to it with the first stage, in terms of WarioWare Get It Together, and like we mentioned about this before, the intro games is the first stage we're going to be experiencing on, so, and of course the main focus of this particular stage is all about Wario himself. So basically though, if you ever played the previous WarioWare games before, you know exactly how this goes. Basically though, we have to go through a serious amount of micro games, and the more you progress, the thing will start to speed up, and eventually it starts to get a little bit more intense and difficult once you're trying to able to aim for high scores. But the other major difference is this time around though is about the fact that not only we can play as Wario, as you can tell, but also that somehow Young Cricket decides to able to join in. So in some cases though, yeah, we can able to actually see different movesets between those characters combined. So now I get the strong sense of feeling that we might able to show off 3 playable characters on the very first stage in the game. So relatively speaking though, I get the strong sense of feeling I don't think we can probably able to come across into Young Cricket stage. So because of that though, yeah, his ability right here for Young Cricket does allows him to not only move around, but also he can able to do some small jumps or even high jumps if you hold down the A button. So yeah, that's about it basically. And also we've somehow bumped into 18 volts, where I get the strong feeling that he doesn't seem able to move around, but rather he tosses discs as projectiles. So yeah, we're able to try to get into more details about the forms of specific character abilities, until specifically for not only advantages, but also disadvantages as well. Like, at least depending on what micro games we're able to actually go into. So because of that, yeah, whenever when this game was first announced, out of nowhere, back in during the forms of sometime in E3 2021, that we got pretty excited about it. Especially this is actually the first ever WarioWare game to be released on the Nintendo Switch. So, and exponentially speaking though, Pac-Man is about the fact that we can able to actually just to show off, you know, every single content, just like always. But here's the thing about this though, Silver, is that I feel like that again though is about the fact that we'll try to explain more details about this particular game once we continue our progressioning. So for now, we can now able to take control of 3 characters at the moment. So every time whenever you do manage to complete one of the micro games as one of the characters, you quickly switch out to a different character, so you can able to try to get used to with different movesets and even different abilities and all that stuff. So that's the prime example for the fact that we can able to do a lot of playable characters to show off. So Yeah, exponentially though is about the fact that, like we said this before, I don't think there's going to be a stage based off from Young Cricket or anything else like that. Unlike WarioWare Smooth Moves, including Game & Wario for the Wii U, and even with the forms of WarioWare Move It. Spoiler alert for those who have not played that game yet, but hopefully we'll get around onto WarioWare Move It at some point later down the road, during the course of in 2024, pretty much. So, yeah, anyways though, and as soon as we're able to go all the way up to, like, let's just say, 10, for instance, I believe we have to force to play one of those playable characters is only suitable for this stage. So, for instance, we're now going to be taking control of Wario again, and here we are onto the first boss micro game. Yeah, just like the forms of how it does on the previous games, the more further you go into, as soon as you come across into boss stage, you will come across into a boss micro game, similar to the previous games. So, yeah, nothing new or anything, except now you can able to take control of whatever characters you want able to play as. So, and exponentially, the boss micro game in the intro games stage, and that's what appears to be Spiky Wario. Where basically though, all you have to do in this boss micro game is pretty simple. Basically though, you have to destroy all the, or just defeat certain enemies, and every once in a while you have to avoid a lot of molten rocks or anything else like that. And then once you make your way to the end, or to the end anyway, basically it's your chance to able to actually keep on attacking the forms of that Spiky Wario block right there, for approximately 3 times. Once you've done so, you are basically completed the entire stage. So, then of course, there might be still some micro games we are still missing on, so hopefully we'll be back for that particular stage once we're able to go for this particular cutscene first. Although, keep this in mind though, Pac-Man, is that unlike the previous games, that basically though, every time whenever we do complete the actual stage, then we're able to actually see the new proper cutscene. Whilst in here though, it's all text boxes here and there. So, yeah, the reason being for this is because, well, the rest of the WarioWare crew, including Wario himself, they somehow managed to get trapped inside the actual gaming handheld console, or to be more specifically, a video game system. So, kind of think about it, it does kind of reminds me of like a similar tone as the forms of Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, where basically though is about the fact that they ended up in the forms of the video game world. Although, except no matter what though, Pac-Man, is that potentially speaking though, is that you're able to go through the serious amount of the environment within like few seconds or something like that. Well, mind you, it's been ages since we've last played, or should I say, since we've last seen Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase, because I don't seem to remember that film that much though, but I suppose beggars can't be choosers, I suppose. So, anyways, let's double check on the intro games catalog, and it seems that we are missing 3 micro games so far. So in some cases though, thankfully the intro game stage is really easy to not only complete the stage itself, but also just trying to able to get the micro games in that particular point as well. So, and luckily though, we can able to skip that particular cinematic cutscene, much like the forms of how it does on the previous games for sure. So, yeah, not much else to it though. Let me know in the comments down below for the question of the day. Have you guys ever played WarioWare Get It Together before? Because I would like to hear your thoughts down below. Because then again though, we are pretty much excited for this back in during the forms of in 2021 when this game was first announced. And let me tell you, I did have some fun with it though. Especially, I will admit though right away, it feels a lot more funner than the forms of how it does it for Game & Wario in my opinion. Because I don't know, Game & Wario, it just doesn't feel right to me. Especially concerning, I totally get it with the forms of this unique you know, the control scheme with the forms of the Wii U gamepad, but ultimately speaking though, it's all down to the forms of the lack of content. Well, to be more accurate though, the lack of micro games variety, which, don't get me wrong, there are certain micro games during the forms of Game & Wario in one of the stages, or one of those mini games you can play, which is by the forms of Gamer, but I just don't feel like that's gonna be twice as fun in my opinion. And also the reason why we probably should able to say this right now, that the reason why we have to skip over Game & Wario is because it feels nothing like the actual WarioWare game for me. Because for I've seen Game & Wario in action, there's barely any multiplayer stuff, and some of these mini-games, I will admit though right away, are incredibly bland and way too similar in structure compared to something related to a superior Nintendo Land. And on top of all that stuff though is about the fact I just feel like that the game itself is twice as expensive nowadays, especially no wonder why that Game & Wario is the lowest selling games ever. Well, in terms of the forms of how much sales it does manage to have, for how much copies sold for that particular game, mind you. Although, mind you though, Pac-Man is about the fact that the Wii U is incredibly flop in the end, so... Even though generally speaking though, Silver is about the fact that at least the Wii U does manage able to actually access to, I would say 4 WarioWare games, I'm pretty sure. Like, one of them on the Game Boy Advance, and as well as the one on the DS, the Wii download version, and of course Game & Wario, but that's about it basically. Although if what I've noticed right from the start though is that recently the Nintendo Switch has already received 3 WarioWare games, one from the Game Boy Advance, you know, with the forms of the Nintendo Switch Online Expansion Pack, and another 2 which are entirely new games for the Nintendo Switch itself. So, and of course, since then we did somehow revisit during the forms of the intro games stage, basically though, once you successfully try to complete the boss micro game, you're able to get yourselves an extra life back, but also, every once in a while, as soon as you move on to level 2 and level 3, we ended up on the bonus stage, where basically though, you're able to grab coins as currency. So basically what these coins can do, not only it actually immediately access the forms of the actual items you can buy during the course of the forms of, let's just say, the crew menu, and on top of that you can also use that for the sake of the forms of trying to use one of your continues. Because the reason why I say continues is that potentially speaking though, ever since in WarioWare Gold for the 3DS, basically though, if you get a game over in one of the stages, once you first time experiencing them, during the course of being the actual story mode, basically though, it's about the fact that you can have an option to continue your progression without needing to start all over again. And by the way, it does need to cost coins, by the way, in order able to actually use one of your continues, because assuming of course if you don't waste too much coins, mind you, well, keep this in mind though, it's been a very long time since we've last played WarioWare Gold for the 3DS, because mind you, we are still busy playing through other Switch games recently, ranging from, well, at this point in time it's about the fact that I believe we've almost finishing up everything for the sake of the forms of Super Mario RPG Remake now. I mean, aside from the fact that I've only got the last few bits and bobs to take care of, likely for instance with the actual the enemy monster book that we need to get a full list of, and on top of that there's also with the forms of some post-game content here and there, so... But let's not get ahead of ourselves. So either way, seems that we've only got 2 lives so far, so hopefully we'll try our best if we aim for the high score. Now I'm presuming to, once we make our way to level 3, portion of certain micro games, hopefully we should be able to actually get the last few micro games before we move along to the next stage. So even then, the entire structure of the story mode itself plays exactly like the forms of in the previous games. However, unlike in WarioWare Gold, you have to go through like 3 different types of leagues, ranging from Mash League, which you have to like press buttons and stuff like that, and as well as the Twist League, and finally Touch League, where basically though it does have different control schemes. And something's worth mentioning for this point, Silver, also, is that the reason why we can't be able to actually decide to do WarioWare Gold on the 3DS either, well, that's just mainly because some of those micro games are actually borrowed it from the likes of not only from WarioWare Inc. Minigame Mania, but same applies with WarioWare Twisted, and Touched, and Smooth Moves, and even with the forms of DIY, there may be some little portions for Game & Wario. Well, mind you, no matter what though, it's almost like a remastered version of certain micro games in the past or something like that. You know, think of like Mario Party the Top 100, except, well, they all contain like 300 micro games in WarioWare Gold, which is insane. Although, keep this in mind though, Silver, is that this game does manage to able to have like 222 micro games, I'm pretty sure, so it might actually have the exact same amount of micro games from the previous games, except WarioWare Touch, because it was like under 200, so I guess that makes it totally obvious for the sake of time. So I mean, yeah, for the most part, the intro games stage is overall pretty easy, but keep this in mind also, this game does manage to bring back the actual familiar system ever since in WarioWare Gold, which appears to be the missions, where basically though, if you complete certain objectives, you can able to actually get yourself some even more coins, so you can able to actually spend on specific items to your crew menu, and on top of that, there's also where the point where, you know what I'm saying for the fact that with all this continued system in mind, but that again though, Silver, we should probably save that particular topic once we get to the later stages to come, so... Oh, dang it, I screwed it up. But that's fine, because obviously, at this point, I think anyway, is that... no! Drat. Oh well, we ended up with 28 points so far. But I suppose that's okay, because as you can tell, we've somehow completed one of the missions right here. I think something tells me it's almost like points-based or something like that. But let's just double check what's in here. And yep, we've somehow got every single micro games in intro games. So pretty good start so far, especially considering for the fact that obviously that was the first stage in the game after all. So now we're done with the forms of Wario intro game stage, so overall not doing too bad. So now let's go ahead and move along to the next stage, which appears to be something that's very familiar. That's what appears to be Mona. So in some cases though, keep this in mind though folks, is that the entire story mode's length is going to be pretty short. So because of that though, there might be a couple of times where basically we're able to make things a little bit more lengthy, not just by the forms of going through the stage itself, but also trying to able to actually access to every single micro games as much as possible, just like the forms of how it does on the previous games. So yeah, we shall see. So anyways, here we go on to Mona's stage right here, and I believe the catalog for this is That's Life, where something relates to like, I don't know about you, because it's been a very long while since we've played this either, but that's just mainly because we're pretty much used to with playing like other games recently, like we've already mentioned about this before, with Super Mario RPG Remake recently, and on top of that, WarioWare Move It. So either way, there's Mona right here. Once again, she does manage to utilize the scooter, or should I say the motor scooter, as far as what I was meant to say, ever since in WarioWare's Move Moves, when she made her way to the forms of the cheerleader session during the course of the actual American football kind of sporting event for cheerleading. So yeah, and this time around though, if you couldn't tell, she does have the ability to able to toss the boomerang as the actual like the projectile or something like that, and also she can able to drive automatically with the forms of the motor scooter. However, you can't stop. So because of that though, yeah, as we said this before, there might be a couple of times in certain micro games does have some advantages for certain characters, and other times some disadvantages. So yeah, so let's get into it with the forms of what a mess. My level looks awful. Bugs inside the game. Did this? Unacceptable. Let's go. And when you start the stage up, that basically does about the fact you always gonna have to stick around with one of those characters, like Mona for instance, and we could actually have a choice between the forms of two different characters we can also choose. So for now, let's go ahead and pick, let's start things off simple, like Wario and Young Cricket. So that should be all good to go for this particular combination. And let us begin Mona's stage in That's Life. Well then, we have to do a bit of a tidy up right here, which is especially noticeable concerning for the fact that the entire place is a huge mess right now, thanks to the forms of Mona's companions that somehow managed able to mess everything else up. So Wolfshad's able to fix that up. So, yeah, with that being said though, it's about the fact that one thing I totally forgot to mention about is that obviously today's day is of course the 6th of January today, in some cases in 2024 today. So, relatively speaking, not much else has been going on, I'm afraid, apart from the fact that in one particular thing in mind, is that potentially speaking though, out of nowhere, it may look like it's going to be to the point where Sonic Prime is about to be getting a Blu-ray release at some point soon. At the very least, it somehow is going to be releases at Bonnie's and Noteball for the sake of the forms of at some point during the 12th of March during the course of in 2024, even though it's pretty impossible to say really, because I know for a fact that we are still begging to be waiting for the third and final season to be released for the sake of the forms of Sonic Prime itself. Although, no matter what though, we've only just got about 5 more days to go until the third season is about to be releasing for the sake of the forms of Sonic Prime, which still we're pretty excited for it, you know? And one thing I will have to admit though right away is that while looking back in Journey Forms of in 2023, that it seems to be more specifically though when it comes to one of the DreamWorks movies, in addition with one of the Pixar movies, and recently with the forms of one of those Illumination films, that it did somehow manage able to have their worst box office opening weekends of all time during the course of the films of 2023, which there are. Well, in terms of DreamWorks though, there's a film called Teenage Kraken, of course, that did somehow perform very poorly during the course of the opening weekend. The same applies with Elemental, and I don't know about the other film was though. It could be something like Ducky related, but I'm sure enough though is about the fact that the positive thing about it is that the Mario movie did substantially well back in Journey Forms of in last year, you know? So, anyway, here comes the boss micro game in turns the forms of Mona's stage, and that's what appears to be known as Delivery Center, where basically though we need to complete the package as what the game tells you need able to insert certain items in that particular box packaging. So because of that, for the most part it's quite simple, but I will admit though right away, I'm not exactly the greatest when it comes to the forms of experiencing this micro game, mainly because it requires a lot of memorization if you do want to concentrate on multiple items at once. But relatively speaking, when you get the hang of it though, especially concerning for the fact that obviously we have to be forced to play as Mona during the course of the forms of this particular boss microgame after all, which that could be also applied to the later stages as well. Oh, and by the way, if you let the time run out, then you have to try again, or if you accidentally place the wrong item in, basically though you have to try again as well. So, now of course, similar to the forms of how it does on the previous games, basically though, if you mess up in one of those boss micro games, well, at least if you ever experience certain stages for the first time, you have to, like, try again, basically. So, assuming, of course, you don't able to actually waste too much lives. So, now, of course, similar to the forms of how it does on the previous games, you start the actual stages up by able to be having ourselves 4 lives. So, all tidied up. Good work, everyone. And now Mona is actually joining the crew, so now we have the ability to play as 4 characters so far. Yeah, which is pretty, cool if you ask me. So once we're done with this particular stage, similar structure to the forms of WarioWare Inc. Minigame Mania, not only we can choose 1 stage, but also 3 other stages, including our favorite stage is about to be on the horizon, but we'll save that and join at some point until tomorrow, basically, because obviously, we will record these in journey forms of the weekends, so let's see how many micro games we are missing. We are missing 8, so hopefully we should be able to try to find as many of those micro games in journey forms of Mona stage, so we'll be back there again. So, and exponentially though, once you complete some other missions, then you will able to get ourselves even more coins if you manage to go into the missions menu. And basically you have to press the A button to, like, accept for completionist, so although, mind you, I haven't exactly fully 100% everything in this game yet. Well, mind you, I've already got all of the micro games on my other account, but it's just no matter what though, trying to 100% in this game in particular is actually way more harder than it looks, similar to the forms of WarioWare Gold, whilst to me, unlike the previous games, including WarioWare Move It, I feel like that 100% completion is actually not too bad for Move It, but we'll get to that eventually. So anyways though, something's worth noting for as well is, potentially speaking though, that we just somehow managed able to discover, no matter what though, that we did somehow about to get ourselves the free expansion thing during at some point in this year by the forms of Front Mission First Remake is getting a hefty free expansion at some point in this year in 2024. So because of that though, in terms of content-wise they're about to be getting, is that I believe something tells me we're about to be able to be receiving some of these other missions or something like that, and especially noticeable there's also local multiplayer, hot seat mode, and new mercenaries and a commander character, and that's the only thing I can probably think about it. And there's also another thing too, is that recently, that it looks like no matter what though, is that Hush has reportedly set to appear in the Batman Part 2. And as far as I'm aware, the filming is about to be airing at some point in this upcoming summer this year, likely in summer 2024, but we're not exactly sure when exactly what that's to come, but we shall see what happens. So, oh, and another thing too is that recently Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has won Most Highly Anticipated Film at the 2023 Cartoon Base Awards. So that's actually a pretty good start, potentially speaking though, when it comes to be more hyped, when it comes to seeing Sonic the Hedgehog 3 at some point in the next couple of months' time. So, geez, we're actually getting pretty close to the point where Sonic 3 is finally going to be releasing on the big screen. So, I bet no matter what though, I believe the teaser trailer might actually, or a teaser logo, might potentially try to appear at some point on the first half of the year, or potentially speaking of, the official trailer might potentially be shown up by the time until likely in October sometime, but we shall see. So even then though, because again, this is just the beginning of 2024, so, and I believe, kind of think about it, remember when I mentioned this earlier, for the sake of the forms of Sonic Prime, is about to be getting a Blu-ray release at some point on the 12th of March, that the response to this though is that it looks like that End Circle Entertainment is responsible for able to get that particular Sonic Prime Blu-ray release schedule. So kind of think about it, they also managed able to done the re-release of the DVD re-releases for not only for maybe the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog alongside with Sonic SatAM, and especially noticeable with probably Sonic Underground as well, but only in North American though, so that's the only thing I was want to classify for noticing this. So anyway though, speaking of the forms of the box office earnings, is that what I've noticed when I've double checked in during the forms of domestic box office earnings when it comes to the top 5, whoever receives the highest grossing studios in Journey Films been last year in 2023, that it seems that so far, Disney's once again at the very top, likely for the sake of the forms of how the fact that it looks like so far, during the course of in 2023, that basically though, is that Disney did somehow became on top, ranging from $1.887 billion, and in Journey Films in second place goes to Universal Pictures by the forms of $1.877 billion, and third place goes to Warner Brothers, which did somehow receive $1.25 billion, and fourth place goes to Sony Pictures by the forms of how the fact that they somehow almost received $1 billion, but close enough though, because they somehow got $971 million. And fifth place goes to Paramount as a result with the funds of $840 million. So, yeah, that seems kind of close, kind of think about it. Although, exponentially speaking though, let's just see what happens if that particular results come by during the course of this year in 2024. So, And also, what I found noticing this already is that what if I managed able to look back on the forms of Mario Kart Tour, which despite the fact that, well, most of the content has already been finished, it might be seems a little bit redundant to able to actually bring New Year's Tour at this point, just because of the lack of 2024 glider. So as a result, that no matter what though, it looks like that we so far have got 4 of those year-based gliders, which are 2020, 2021, 2022, and 2023. But sadly, they won't be a 2024 glider, so it might be seems a little bit more overly redundant at this point. So, but that's the way I feel about it, basically. So even though, yeah. Alright, so here we go with this boss stage as 18 volts. I wonder how tricky this can be with 18 volts, so we shall see. And also, one of the subjects with the forms of how to fact for certain films in journey forms within last year in 2023, at the end of the day though, is that the winner of the forms of the best highest grossing films in terms of 2023 after all, number 1 goes to Barbie, which is not that surprising concerning for the fact that we still have not seen the film for ourselves, mainly because we are still waiting for Sonic the Hedgehog 3 to be rolled around, even especially noticeable with the forms of Kung Fu Panda 4, and on top of that, there's also Inside Out 2 that we're really looking forward to, even with Deadpool 3, and of course, like we've already said this countless amount of times, Sonic the Hedgehog 3. So, anyway, second place goes to the Super Mario Bros. Movie, which it did pretty well though, like we said this before. And third place goes to Opalama, which despite the fact that it's kind of hard for me to able to keep in track of how many ownings they've got for the box office ownings. So yeah, relatively speaking though, those 3 films did a really dang good job. And on top of that, fourth place goes to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And 5th place goes to Fast X or Fast and Furious 10. 6th place goes to Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. 7th place goes to Fall River Red. And 8th place goes to The Wandering Earth 2. And by the way, those 2 films that we've mentioned this earlier, it's been made by China Film Group Corporation. So something's well classified for noticing this from the start. So anyway, and the 9th place goes to The Little Mermaid live-action version, which I just don't really care about. But anyways though, we ended up in 33. Oh well, at least we had a pretty decent run, but hey. And finally, 10th place goes to Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. So, that's the only thing we can probably say about it. So, oh goody, we've got every single micro game, so that should be pretty good. So, I suppose with that being said though, I think we should probably end things off this point right here. So join us next time for more of Let's Play of WarioWare Get It Together, is that we could be able to actually tackle through the next 2 stages. I think, relatively speaking though, we're about to decide able to tackle through, you know exactly what's to come, right? That's what appears to be we're going on to 9 Volt stage next. So, that should be our part of the plan, especially because we are curious to know what Nintendo games they're going to be referencing this time around for the sake of the forms of this game. So, but then again, we'll have to wait and find out at some point until tomorrow. So speaking of which, we'll see you guys until tomorrow. Later fellas, see you guys then.